I kept my late partner's family and my daughter's life out of respect. Now they're suing me for custody, saying I'm unfit for moving on with someone new. I'm a 30-year-old single mom to my daughter Clara, who just turned 2. Her pregnancy wasn't something I planned. Jack, Clara's father, and I had a casual, no strings attached thing going on for about 7 months when I unexpectedly got pregnant. He lived out of state but traveled to my city pretty often for work. We met one night at a bar and just hit it off from there. When I found out I was pregnant, we both had a serious talk about what to do. I ultimately decided to keep the baby, and Jack made it clear he wanted to be involved in her life. So, we agreed to raise Clara together, not as a couple, just as co-parents doing the best we could from different states. But then everything changed. Jack passed away while I was still pregnant. His parents, Linda and James, already knew about the baby at that point. We had even done a prenatal paternity test, so there was no doubt Clara was Jack's. His death hit all of us hard, but understandably, it shattered them. Clara was their only grandchild, and they started calling her their light in the darkness. They have 2 other kids, Ruth, who's 37 and struggling with infertility, and Lily, 27, who's single and doesn't want children. So Clara became extra special to them, the only grandkid in a family that desperately wanted one. Most of Jack's family still lives in his hometown, which is in a different state. The only exception is Lily, who actually lives overseas. The rest of them stay close to home because they're tied to the family business. Meanwhile, I built a life here in my city with my career, my family, and Clara. Since Clara was born, we've had a mutual, informal agreement about visits. There's nothing legal in writing, but I've always let her grandparents and aunts visit regularly. They usually come by twice a month. James and Linda are the most consistent, though Ruth drops in every now and then too. Honestly, I've always appreciated how involved they are in Clara's life. But one ongoing point of disagreement between us has been the idea of Clara traveling to their state. They own this big family estate that's been around for over 100 years, and they really want Clara to experience that part of her roots. In their town, their family name holds weight, they're practically treated like royalty. And sure, I get it, it's good for Clara to know where she comes from. But I've always been firm on one thing, she's not going anywhere without me. I've already taken her there 3 times myself since she was born, but apparently, that's not enough for them. Our relationship used to be civil, even though I had to deal with Linda sticking her nose in my parenting a little too much. Things didn't really go downhill until I started dating Ted. Ted is 34, and we've been together for nearly a year now. He has a daughter, Marie, who's 4, and she lives with him full-time. We don't live together, and between our jobs, parenting, and everything else, we probably only manage to see each other about 3 or 4 times a week. But that didn't stop Linda from making snide remarks about how often Ted's around. She even complained about his car being parked in front of my house. Marie and Clara have become close, they have playdates, even sleepovers, but somehow Linda finds something negative to say about it all. She's relentless. Things came to a head 2 weeks ago when I emailed Linda, James, and Ruth with a Christmas Eve invite. Ted and I are hosting a small get-together with both our families and some close friends, and I wanted Clara's grandparents to be included. I also offered them the option to have Clara over for lunch on Christmas Day if they preferred that. The next day, Linda texted me saying they already had plans to take Clara to their place for Christmas. I immediately told her that wasn't going to happen. 2 days went by without a word from her, and then she called me. She said she'd waited 2 days, hoping I'd cool off and be reasonable. I asked what she meant by that, and she went on about how they had rights to Clara and had waited long enough to finally take her home for Christmas. She said now that Clara was older, it was time she traveled without me. I was stunned. I told her we never agreed to anything like that and I wasn't comfortable with it, not at all. Linda tried to say this was the discussion before the trip, like springing it on me was somehow acceptable. I laughed out loud and told her she was out of her mind. That conversation quickly spiraled. She accused me of trying to erase Jack's memory in Clara's life, and I, admittedly, said some pretty harsh things about how Jack never even got to meet Clara in the first place. After she hung up, James called. He tried to smooth things over but ended up slipping and revealing that they had bought Clara's plane tickets 2 months ago without even mentioning it to me. That was the final straw. I told him I wouldn't let them walk all over me. James lost it and demanded I apologize to Linda, or else they'd take this to court. I didn't back down. I said they were the ones choosing to make this a battle. Well, a few days later, I was served with court papers. They're suing me for custody, claiming I'm unfit to be Clara's mother. Thankfully, I already had a lawyer lined up, even before that last phone call. She told me they don't stand much of a chance. At best, they might be able to get formal visitation rights. But still, it's stressful, and I'm worried about what this could turn into. People in my life are pretty split about it. Some say I'm doing the right thing by setting boundaries. Others think I'm being petty for not letting them take Clara for Christmas, especially since they've always been good grandparents. Let me clarify a few things. 1. How do they know so much about my personal life, like Ted's car or Marie's sleepovers? Well, they visit Clara at least twice a month. They pick her up and drop her off at my house. So yeah, that's how Linda spotted Ted's car parked in my driveway. I live in a gated community, and technically, non-residents aren't supposed to park in front of homes. The first time she saw the car, she asked if I was going to call security to have it towed. I told her no, it's Ted's. They also used to FaceTime Clara about 3 times a week. Sometimes they'd call when Marie was still at the house, so they saw her on camera during playdates or sleepovers. 2. They weren't expecting Clara to fly alone. I guess I didn't explain that well. Their plan was to fly here, pick her up, take her back with them, and bring her back a week later. So no, she was never supposed to be on a plane by herself. 3. Do I think they were planning to kidnap her? I honestly don't know. Some things they've said have made me paranoid. James claimed they also bought her return ticket, but honestly, I don't believe anything they say anymore. Not without proof. 4. Do I still speak to them? No. On my lawyer's advice, I've cut off all visits and FaceTime calls with Clara. I'm only communicating through legal channels now. I haven't blocked them, but I'm not answering their calls. If they text or email me, I forward everything to my attorney. Right now, I'm focused on protecting Clara and building a solid case. Today was all about gathering paperwork, creating a foo binder, and documenting absolutely everything. Thank you all so much for the support. Don't worry, Clara and I live in a secure, gated community with cameras and armed guards. No one's taking her from me. That wasn't planning ahead, what they did felt more like something out of a delusional travel agency. I'm Clara's mother, not some vacation rental they can reserve on a whim like I'm Airbnb. And honestly, that's what pushed me over the edge. The sheer entitlement. Who does that with someone else's kid? It's like they've decided Clara is theirs and I'm just some obstacle they have to go through. Someone commented that if they were in my shoes, they'd hire the most cutthroat, no-nonsense lawyer around to bury these people in court. They said I couldn't trust them with Clara, not when they refused to show even the most basic respect. They called them selfish, manipulative, and warned me to fight fire with fire. Well, lucky for me, my lawyer is that type. She's a powerhouse, been working in family law for nearly 2 decades. Funny enough, my sister studied under her back in law school and was the one who told me to call her as soon as this mess started. I did. Best decision I made. Another person asked if I had security, worried they might show up unannounced. The answer is yes, I have a solid system in place. My dad personally oversaw everything when I moved in while pregnant. Every corner of the property is covered with cameras. There's no way anyone could show up here without being caught on video. One commenter said I'd been more than generous trying to build a relationship between Clara and her dad's side of the family. They were confident the grandparents wouldn't win the case, but asked about grandparents' rights in my country. They also warned that since James and Linda had already acted shady, I should push to make sure any court-ordered visits happen only nearby, nothing long distance. So here's how it works in my country. Because Jack passed away, his parents do have legal visitation rights. But those rights are limited. The law says any visits have to happen in the same city where the child lives. According to my lawyer, there's almost no chance they'll win any form of custody. Ironically, this case could backfire and reduce their access to Clara, since we never had legal visitation set before. Some folks asked about Clara's inheritance. That's a fair question. In our country, the law automatically divides a person's estate if they pass away without being married or in a long-term cohabiting relationship. Jack and I were neither. He hadn't lived with me long enough for it to qualify. So, legally, Clara received 50% of Jack's estate immediately. The other 50% went to his parents. When they pass away someday, their share will legally pass to Clara too. There was no need for an executor in our case, it's just how inheritance works here. That said, I didn't want any future drama, so I put Clara's assets into a secure investment trust. This way, there's a clear record and no one can accuse me of mishandling her money. Update, February 11, 2025. A few months ago, I posted my story here, never expecting it to take off the way it did. It ended up spreading beyond Reddit, and suddenly people were talking about my life on different apps. I wasn't sure if I should share an update, mostly because I was terrified of being doxxed. Along with the attention came hate. I got messages full of insults. People reposted my story, mocked me, said I deserved to lose custody, and even accused me of being an alcoholic just because of my grammar mistakes. For the record, I don't drink. I know the internet can be brutal, but some folks really took it to another level. I just want to say this, to anyone who bullied me for not writing perfect English, try learning a second language. Then maybe you'll understand. English isn't my first language. I'm doing the best I can, and I'm proud of that. Despite the hate, most people were kind. The majority of you showed genuine concern and support, especially for Clara. For that, I'm deeply grateful. Clara's doing great. She's healthy, happy, and thriving. Thankfully, no one tried anything after I posted. But I'm still cautious. I've stayed on alert. Right after I shared everything online, I spent several days working nonstop with my lawyer, my family, and even my home security company. I had to make sure all our cameras were up to date and that every bit of documentation was ready for court. We pulled together files on me, Clara, and even proof that Ted has never stayed the night at my place thanks to access logs in our gated community. My whole family knew how paranoid I was about potential kidnapping, and they made it their mission to stay close and watch over us. To everyone who offered advice, thank you. I took a lot of your tips seriously. I even contacted Clara's pediatrician, pediatric dentist, swim instructor, and the staff at my parents' church, where Clara sometimes attends kids' classes. They all know about the custody case now. I told them under no circumstances should they give out information about Clara or me. Everyone's on the same page. They've been understanding and supportive. Some folks suggested reaching out to Clara's aunts, Jack's sisters, to see if they were even aware of what their parents were doing. I wasn't sure how to go about it at first, but my lawyer said it would be okay if I stuck to text or email. Funny enough, before I could even message them, Lily, the younger sister who lives in Europe, texted me. She asked if I had received Clara's Christmas gifts that she had mailed. I figured that was my chance, so I sent her a detailed text explaining what was going on with her parents. Lily was completely blindsided. She had no idea about the lawsuit or that her parents were planning to take Clara on a plane for Christmas. She said she'd reach out to Ruth to find out more since Ruth had been distant from the family group chats. A day later, Lily and Ruth made a group chat with me and asked if we could hop on a video call. I told them I had to run it by my lawyer. My lawyer gave me the green light under one condition, that I record the call for protection. Both Lily and Ruth agreed. That call turned out to be more revealing than I ever expected. During the video call, Ruth apologized for being absent these past few months. She explained she'd been going through a lot personally, but she also had some joyful news to share. After years of trying, she's finally pregnant. She's around 22 weeks along now, after her third round of IVF. She told me that only she and her husband Sam knew about the IVF and the pregnancy. They decided to keep it quiet because, in the past, Linda had put her under enormous pressure every time she tried to conceive. The stress from her mom was overwhelming, and this time, she wanted peace. That meant creating some distance from anyone or anything that triggered her anxiety. Unfortunately, Linda topped that list. Even though I wasn't surprised to hear she was pregnant, I knew she'd been trying. I was genuinely happy for her. She deserves this joy. Let me give you some context. Linda has always been what people call a boy mom. She never had a warm relationship with her daughters, and although I sensed some distance between them, I didn't realize just how deep the divide went. James, on the other hand, always seemed closer to Ruth and Lily. Ruth insisted she had no idea about the custody lawsuit until Lily told her just the day before our video call. Once she found out, she immediately talked to her dad and even called his best friend, a lawyer who usually represents James. That friend, surprisingly, didn't know anything about the case. Meanwhile, when Ruth questioned James directly, he tried to dodge the subject. But she didn't let up. Eventually, he caved and admitted everything. James claimed he hadn't wanted to go through with the lawsuit, but that Linda's mental health had gotten so bad, he felt like he had no choice. According to him, the only thing that gave Linda the will to get out of bed was the idea of spending time with Clara. He said the lawsuit was just meant to pressure me into giving them more generous visitation rights and the ability to take Clara on extended trips. He insisted they never planned to take her permanently, but at this point, I don't trust a single word that comes out of his mouth. Ruth and Sam were furious. They tore into James for trying to manipulate me through legal threats instead of addressing Linda's need for serious help. They called him out for enabling Linda instead of getting her into therapy. James just shrugged it off and said Linda isn't crazy and flat out refuses to see a therapist. He said she won't go under any circumstance. That's when Ruth gave him an ultimatum: drop the lawsuit, get Linda the mental health support she needs, or she would cut contact and resign from the family business entirely. She also admitted she was scared that if anything happened to her during childbirth, her own husband Sam might face the same situation I'm in, with her parents trying to take custody. James finally broke down and agreed to Ruth's demands. After that call, I had some hope that the lawsuit would be dropped. But unfortunately, where I live, the courts go on break from December 20th to January 20th and only handle emergency cases during that time. Mine didn't qualify. Their lawyer did contact mine to say they wanted to end the lawsuit and work out a formal visitation agreement that would be approved by the court. I agreed to move forward, but only under two conditions. They had to officially withdraw the custody case first, and they had to follow my rules regarding visitation. Eventually, under pressure from her family, Linda agreed to start therapy. She's now seeing both a psychiatrist and a therapist. She was diagnosed with depression and PTSD related to Jack's death. My lawyer made sure her doctors provided a formal evaluation of her mental health as part of the legal agreement. That was non-negotiable for me. I've never said this here before, but Jack's death wasn't just sudden, it was violent. He was killed during a robbery gone wrong. It was shocking and traumatic for all of us, but I think Linda and James absorbed the worst of it. Looking back, I always felt they hadn't properly processed their grief. Instead, they shifted their focus to my pregnancy just weeks after losing their son. I was right. In our visitation agreement, I also insisted that both Linda and James participate in grief counseling. They agreed. For the first few months, we'll all be doing virtual family therapy together. It's important that we create a healthier dynamic for Clara's sake. To be honest, I have no complaints about how they've handled things since agreeing to the terms. They tried to argue against supervised visitation at first, but I refused to budge. There was no reason for me to trust them unsupervised, not after everything. Now, they're allowed to see Clara twice a month at a designated family center in my city. It's a public facility where matters involving child custody and supervised visitation are handled. Security is tight, and every visit is monitored by a social worker assigned to our case. As for my fears about kidnapping, well, sadly, the legal system here didn't take them seriously. My lawyer and I filed a police report documenting my concerns, but the authorities didn't see it as a valid threat. At least now there's something on file, even if they chose not to act on it. James did end up sending proof that they'd purchased return tickets for Clara. But honestly, that means very little to me. They have money. Buying 2 tickets and only using one wouldn't be hard. I still don't believe they weren't planning to keep her longer than they said. Because of that, supervised visits are here to stay for everyone. Even her aunts know now that if they want to see Clara, it'll be at the family center and under watch. Everyone's playing by the rules at the moment, and visits have already resumed a couple of weeks ago. As for traveling to their state? Not happening. I'm not risking it. They still hold a lot of sway in their small town, and I'm not about to give them the chance to use that influence to take my daughter from me. So for now, Clara and I are doing just fine. We're finally able to enjoy some quiet time together, just the two of us, and make up for the stressful mess that was Christmas. Thanks again to everyone who supported me, gave advice, and showed kindness when I needed it most. This mama bear isn't backing down anytime soon.